"Shut up, Crockett." The words exploded from Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, echoing across the chamber like a gunshot. But Jasmine Crockett didn't bow her head. She locked eyes with him, steady as steel, carrying the weight of millions who had been silenced before. In America today, over 60% of citizens believe justice favors the powerful, while 1 in 3 Black Americans report racial bias in the courts. That silence? She refused to accept it. This wasn't politics. This wasn't theater. This was a war over truth, power, and dignity. And before the nation, Crockett versus Trump ignited the most explosive confrontation Congress had seen in decades. The gavel had barely struck when chaos erupted. The hearing room, packed with reporters, aides, and a restless audience, was supposed to be a solemn chamber of truth. Instead, it became a battlefield. Trump leaned forward, his face twisted in mockery. "Witch hunter," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. The words slithered through the air like poison, aimed to humiliate and to provoke. The insult struck with the force of a hammer. The room gasped. Cameras whirred, zooming in to capture every flicker of anger, every bead of sweat. Jasmine Crockett didn't hesitate. Her palm slammed against the polished oak table with a crack that silenced even the whispers in the back row. She rose to her feet, her voice thundering through the chamber. "You cannot treat the law as your plaything," she declared, her fingers stabbing the air toward Trump like a blade. The moment was electric. Reporters scribbled furiously. Aides exchanged nervous glances. The chairman banged the gavel again, but the sound was swallowed by the storm that had just broken loose. Trump's lips curled into a smirk. He thrived in chaos, fed on it like a beast starved for attention. He leaned back in his chair, spreading his arms wide, his arrogance filling the room. "Look at her," he chuckled darkly, "pretending to be the voice of justice. Just another politician hunting for headlines." The crowd hissed and murmured. Some laughed nervously. Others shouted in outrage. The temperature in the chamber rose, though the air conditioning blasted at full force. Jasmine's eyes burned. She refused to look away. Every muscle in her face spoke of rage contained, channeled, refined into something sharper than anger. Conviction. "Headlines," she shot back, her words ringing like steel on steel. "This isn't about headlines. This is about the people you've trampled, the voices you've silenced, the truth you've twisted until it no longer resembles truth at all." The chamber vibrated with her defiance. It was no longer just a statement. It was a declaration of war. Trump leaned forward again, his smirk fading. "You're nothing but noise, Crockett," he growled, his voice lower now, colder. "And noise fades." But Jasmine did not flinch. Her chest rose and fell steadily. Her hands gripped the table, knuckles white but unyielding. "Noise can shake walls," she said, steady and unblinking. "And today, Mr. President, the walls are shaking." The room erupted, gasps, murmurs, the scratching of pens, the clicking of cameras. Every sound became part of the orchestra of confrontation. The chairman pounded his gavel again. "Order! Order!" he barked, but the words fell like feathers against the weight of history unfolding before his eyes. For this was no ordinary exchange. This was a clash of titans, justice against power, truth against arrogance, a warrior of the people against a man who believed himself untouchable. Reporters in the front row whispered, "This is the headline of the decade." One cameraman muttered under his breath, "This feels like the start of something bigger, something dangerous." Trump's face darkened. His bravado cracked for a fraction of a second, just enough for the cameras to catch. And Crockett seized it. "You call me a witch hunter," she said, her voice calm now, deliberate, almost surgical. "But what I hunt is corruption. What I expose is hypocrisy. And what I demand is accountability. Do those words scare you, Mr. Trump?" Her question hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Trump didn't answer. He glared. His silence said more than any word could. The audience leaned forward. The nation watching from living rooms across America leaned forward too. Breath held, pulses quickened. It was no longer just a hearing. It was theater. It was war. It was history being etched into the very fabric of democracy. The first spark had been lit, and the fire was only beginning to spread. As the cameras rolled and the words echoed far beyond the walls of Congress, one thing was certain. This confrontation would not be forgotten. And if you want to witness every twist, every blow, and every truth revealed in this clash of power and justice, make sure you're here, with us, on Harrison Stories. The chairman's gavel fell again, desperate to restore order. But the chamber was no longer in his hands. It belonged to them, Crockett and Trump. Jasmine leaned forward, eyes locked, her tone sharpened to a blade. "Mr. Trump," she began, her voice cutting through the noise like a bell, "you've claimed again and again that you never attempted to pressure state officials to overturn results. Do you still stand by that statement, under oath?" The room froze. The question was a dagger aimed straight at the soft flesh of Trump's credibility. Trump's jaw tightened. He puffed up his chest and laughed, the sound hollow and rehearsed. "Another ridiculous question. Everyone knows it was a perfect call. Perfect. Ask anyone. Well, anyone who isn't blinded by partisan hate." He waved his hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. But Jasmine didn't blink. She pressed. "Perfect, you say. Yet the transcript shows you asking officials to find votes. How is that not an attempt to manipulate the democratic process?" Gasps rippled through the room. Trump's head snapped toward her, fury flashing across his face. "Lies!" he barked. His voice boomed like thunder, rattling the microphone. "You twist everything. I was ensuring integrity. Integrity. Something you wouldn't know if it slapped you in the face." The audience erupted into murmurs. Cameras zoomed so close you could see the vein pulsing in Trump's temple. But Jasmine stood tall, her voice steady, her words precise. "You don't get to redefine integrity, Mr. Trump. The evidence speaks for itself." She slid a stack of documents forward, pages marked with red tabs like warning flares. "Here, your own words, your own calls. You demanded officials betray their duty. That's not integrity. That's coercion." Trump slammed his palm against the desk, the echo jolting the chamber. "You're disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful," he roared. "You think you can trap me with paperwork? With your pathetic little tricks? I built an empire. I ran a country. And I'm not going to be lectured by some nobody congresswoman." The insult hit the room like a lightning strike. Gasps, shouts, a reporter nearly dropped his pen. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She leaned closer, her tone dropping to a quiet, razor-sharp whisper that forced everyone to lean in. "Then answer the question, Mr. Trump. Did you, or did you not, demand that officials find votes for you?" Trump's lips parted, but no words came. For a heartbeat, silence swallowed him whole. The pause was everything. The mighty showman, the master of the stage, cornered. Even if only for a flicker of a second, cameras captured it. The hesitation, the stumble, the humanity beneath the armor of arrogance. Jasmine seized the opening. "You see, Mr. Trump, shouting doesn't erase the truth. Insults don't erase the facts. And intimidation doesn't erase democracy." The crowd erupted, some clapping, others shouting, the chairman hammering his gavel to splinters. But nothing could drown out the clash now. Trump lurched forward, red-faced, spitting words like fire. "You're a liar, a fraud. You hate America. You hate the people. You hate everything this country stands for. You're the witch hunter, not me." His voice cracked with rage. Spittle flecked the microphone. The fury that once terrified rivals now looked unhinged. Jasmine, calm as steel, answered with a single piercing line. "I don't hunt witches, Mr. Trump. I hunt the truth." The words detonated. The chamber shook with their force. Reporters scribbled them in block letters, knowing they would dominate tomorrow's front pages. One journalist whispered into his recorder, awe in his voice. "This isn't a hearing anymore. This is a prize fight." And within minutes, the headlines spread like wildfire. Congress becomes the arena. Crockett versus Trump in verbal slugfest. The hearing that turned into a ring. Round 1. Crockett lands the first blow. The duel had begun, not with fists, but with words sharper than steel, more devastating than any physical strike. And as the nation watched, they knew this was only the beginning. Trump leaned back for a moment, his breathing heavy, eyes narrowing. The pause wasn't retreat. It was the coil of a predator before the pounce. Then he exploded. "You're nothing but a political tool," he thundered, his voice booming through the chamber. "A puppet. You sit there pretending to care about truth, but everyone knows you're just another soldier for the radical left, desperate for headlines and camera time." The accusation struck like a grenade tossed across the floor. Gasps filled the air. His allies shifted forward, nodding, ready to amplify the blast. One congressman shouted over the din, "She's not here for justice. She's here for vengeance." Another chimed in, "This entire hearing is a circus, a disgrace to the institution." Suddenly, Trump wasn't alone. A phalanx of voices rose in unison, creating a wall of noise, a front designed to crush Jasmine under its sheer volume. The chairman pounded his gavel. "Order! Order!" But order was gone. This was no longer a hearing. It was open combat. Trump, sensing momentum, leaned forward, his finger stabbing the air. "You're not investigating me, Congresswoman Crockett. You're persecuting me. Just like they persecuted me for 4 years when I was president. Witch hunts, hoaxes, lies. And now you think you can do it again?" His supporters pounded their desks, their rhythm like war drums. The spectacle was deafening. But in the eye of the storm, Jasmine sat motionless, calm, composed, waiting. And then she struck. Her hand slid to the folder at her side. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled out the first piece of evidence. An audio transcript, stamped with official markings. The sound of paper sliding across the desk sliced through the chaos like a blade. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice steady, commanding the room, "you may shout all you want. You may call me names. You may summon your allies to shield you. But the truth doesn't bend to your volume." She held up the document, the pages trembling, not from her hands but from the weight of their contents. "This is Exhibit A, a recording. Your voice, Mr. Trump. Pressuring officials, asking them to falsify numbers. This isn't politics. This is evidence." The room erupted. Some gasped. Some cursed under their breath. Cameras clicked in a frenzy, lenses flashing like lightning strikes. Trump's face drained, then flushed crimson. He slammed the desk again, louder this time. "Fake! It's fake! Total fake! Everyone knows recordings can be doctored. Everyone knows Democrats will stop at nothing." His words rattled with fury, but beneath the bluster, cracks appeared. His eyes darted, searching for a lifeline, a distraction, anything to seize control again. Jasmine didn't move. She let the evidence hang in the air like smoke after an explosion. Every second of silence was a victory. Online, the reaction was immediate. Live-stream chats scrolled faster than eyes could follow. "This is better than Netflix. Trump's cracking. You can see it. Jasmine just dropped the bomb. This is the political thriller of the year." Hashtags surged across platforms. "Duruna Crockett a Favisa Trump. Josh's Exhibit A Shashing hearing or movie." In living rooms across America, people leaned forward, captivated, unable to look away. Inside the chamber, Trump bared his teeth, roaring louder. "This is a sham. A sham, do you hear me? You can't touch me. I'm the president. The people love me. You can't erase that." But his words no longer filled the room the way they once did. Jasmine's evidence sat between them, a silent witness that cut deeper than any insult. She leaned in, her tone cool, almost surgical. "You can shout witch hunt 1,000 times, Mr. Trump, but when the witch holds the match, the fire speaks louder than your denials." The line landed like a hammer blow. Even some of Trump's allies faltered, their chants thinning, their voices dropping. The duel had shifted. For the first time, the scales tipped visibly. Trump was roaring, but Jasmine was drawing blood. And as the hearing raged on, one truth became undeniable. This wasn't just testimony. This was history being written, line by line, clash by clash, in front of millions. And the story was only growing darker. Jasmine didn't blink. She knew the first blow had landed. But she wasn't done, not even close. With slow, deliberate movement, she reached into her folder again. The room seemed to lean forward with her hand. From the leather binder, she pulled a document stamped in bold, unmistakable letters. Classified. A ripple of shock tore through the chamber. Trump's eyes widened. His posture stiffened. Jasmine rose to her feet, holding the document like a torch. Members of Congress, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen watching across this nation, she declared, her voice steady but heavy with gravity. What I am about to present is not rumor, not speculation, but a government record, declassified only yesterday. Gasps, murmurs, cameras zoomed. The room quivered with anticipation. She turned toward the screen behind her. With a click, the massive monitor lit up. The document blazed across it, line by line, paragraph by paragraph. It was there in black and white, notes of meetings, names, conversations. The unmistakable signature at the bottom, Donald J. Trump. Jasmine's voice rang out, unshaken. This memo documents direct attempts to obstruct the certification process. It proves pressure was applied not only to state officials, but also to federal agencies. Orders from the very top, from Mr. Trump himself. The chamber detonated, voices collided, chairs scraped. Reporters scrambled to dictate history in real time. And then, Trump erupted. His fist crashed onto the desk, the sound like a gunshot. He stood towering, face a storm of crimson. "This is a lie," he roared, the microphone trembling from the force of his voice. "A complete fabrication. You can't parade secret papers in here and call it truth. This is a setup, a disgrace, a witch hunt like no other." The chairman's gavel slammed. "Order! Order!" But his voice was drowned in the inferno. Trump pounded the table again, veins bulging at his temples. "This document is fake. You hear me? Fake. I never signed anything like that. I never ordered anything like that. It's all a Democratic trick." His allies leapt to his defense, shouting over each other, "She can't do this. This is illegal. She's manipulating classified material." The room became chaos incarnate, but Jasmine remained steady, her eyes locked on Trump, her hand raised toward the glowing evidence. "Your signature is right there, Mr. Trump," she said, her tone slicing through the clamor. "Your words, your orders, your intent. Deny it all you want, but the ink doesn't lie." The silence that followed her words was almost unbearable. Even the most hardened cynics in the gallery leaned forward, their skepticism cracking under the weight of the text on screen. Trump shook his head violently, slamming his palm again and again as though he could crush the document into dust with sheer will. "This is fraud. Fraud! You people are enemies of America, enemies of freedom. You want to destroy me because you can't control me." He pointed directly at Jasmine, jabbing the air like a blade. "You're the fraud, Crockett. You and every single one of your corrupt friends. You want my head on a stick, but you'll never get it." The chairman's gavel pounded again, splinters flying from the wood. But no force on earth could smother the fire that had taken hold. The hearing was no longer a hearing. It was a battlefield, a war for truth, power, and legacy. Every word was a strike, every document a weapon, every shout a battle cry. Trump's roar reverberated through the chamber, raw and feral. "This is my country. You can't take it from me. You can't erase me." Jasmine's voice cut back, sharp, fearless. "No, Mr. Trump, this is our country, and you don't get to burn it down just to save yourself." The gallery gasped again, as though the oxygen itself had been ripped from the room. Online, millions typed furiously into the void. "This isn't politics anymore. It's war. Trump's losing it. Jasmine's unshakable. Are we watching history collapse in real time?" The feed trended instantly. War. Ink doesn't lie. Chornar. Breaking point. Yashorn Crockett vs. Trump. The nation sat on edge, hearts pounding, because they knew. This wasn't just testimony. This wasn't just scandal. This was a collision of two forces, too big for the walls of Congress to contain. The hearing had crossed its threshold. It was no longer about questions and answers. It was about survival, honor, and who would walk away from the fire. Jasmine leaned forward, her eyes locked on Trump like crosshairs. No hesitation, no pause. Her questions came like bullets. "Who called those officials, Mr. Trump? Who ordered the meetings behind closed doors? Who signed the memo authorizing pressure campaigns in key states?" Bang, bang, bang. Each question cracked like a gunshot across the chamber. the force of her words pinning him tighter, cornering him against the wall of truth. Trump's face hardened. His lips curled into a snarl. He slammed his hand on the microphone and barked, "You don't have the standing to question me. You don't have the qualifications, the background, or the respect. You are nothing compared to me." The chamber trembled at the ferocity of his voice. But Jasmine did not flinch. A faint, icy smile curled at the corner of her lips. She let the silence stretch, her calmness slicing through his fury. Then she answered, softly at first, but with the sharpness of a blade. "Justice doesn't need qualifications from you, Mr. Trump." The words sliced deep. A gasp echoed from the gallery. Some clapped, others booed, the entire room splitting into factions like an arena of gladiators. On one side, Trump's supporters pounded their desks, their voices rising like a mob. "Unfair! Witch hunt! Sham!" On the other side, applause thundered from Jasmine's allies, voices chanting above the chaos. "Truth! Answer the question! No one is above the law." The chairman's gavel cracked against the wood again and again, desperate, hopeless. But the chamber was alive, uncontrollable, consumed by the fire. Trump leaned in, his voice low, venomous. "You think you're clever? You think anyone cares what you say? Without me, you'd be nobody. Without me, you wouldn't even be on this stage." Jasmine's eyes gleamed, steady as stone. "I'm here because the people put me here. And I'll remind you, power doesn't make truth. Truth unmasks power." Her words echoed like thunder. The applause swelled again, spilling into cheers. Trump, furious, tried to drown her out. "Liar! Fraud! Everything you say is twisted. You don't care about America. You only care about tearing me down." He pointed at her, his finger trembling with rage. "You're a disgrace to this chamber, a disgrace to this country, and history will spit you out." But Jasmine didn't retreat. She rose from her chair, her voice firm, rising above the storm. "History doesn't bow to threats. It bows to evidence, and every word you've spoken here today only tightens the chains of your own lies." The crowd roared, half in outrage, half in thunderous approval. The split was undeniable. The chamber was no longer a single body. It was a battlefield torn down the middle. Journalists scribbled furiously, their notes frantic. The hearing has collapsed into tribal war. Crockett versus Trump, the verbal battle of the century. Online, the comments blazed across screens like wildfire. "I can't breathe. This is insane. Trump's unraveling. Jasmine's on fire. This feels like the final round of a heavyweight fight." The camera zoomed on Jasmine, her cold smile unbroken. She had weathered his storm. She had answered his roar with precision. And for the first time in years, Donald Trump looked like the man cornered, not the man commanding. The tension snapped into a silence so sharp it cut the air. For one brief moment, both sides froze, hanging on the knife's edge of what would come next. This was no longer just testimony. It was spectacle. It was war. It was the clash of two forces so immovable, so undeniable, that the walls of Congress seemed too small to contain them. And across America, millions leaned closer to their screens, breathless, unable to look away. Because they knew this was not the end. It was only the escalation. And if you felt every strike, every gasp, every word burn into history tonight, don't miss what comes next. Subscribe to Harrison Stories and witness this battle unfold, round by round, until the very last blow. The chamber was still vibrating from the clash, breathless, unstable. And then Trump moved. A smirk spread across his face, the kind that carried both arrogance and malice. He reached beneath his stack of folders and pulled out a crisp document. The paper gleamed under the fluorescent lights, raised high like a weapon. His voice thundered, "Ladies and gentlemen, this right here is proof that Jasmine Crockett is compromised, biased. She was never fit to question me." Gasps rippled across the chamber. Cameras zoomed in, every eye locked on the pages in his hand. Trump slammed the document on the desk, shoving it forward. "Emails, correspondence, evidence of her colluding with my enemies, working against me long before this hearing even began. She's a fraud. Hell, the crowd exploded. Half the room roared in triumph, fists pounding desks. Finally exposed! The other half recoiled, stunned into silence, fear flickering in their eyes. For one blistering moment, it looked like Trump had turned the tide. The whispers spread like wildfire. Could it be true? Did she sabotage him from the start? Is this the end of her credibility? Trump leaned back smug, basking in the chaos he had unleashed. His supporters laughed, shouted, pointed at Jasmine with venom. The chairman struggled to restore order, his gavel drowned in noise. And Jasmine? She sat still, unmoved. Her eyes scanned the room, reading the doubt, the panic, the sudden shift in weight. Trump leaned forward, mocking. What do you say now, Crockett? Where's your big talk? Where's your so-called honor? You're caught, and the world knows it. The room was his, for now. But Jasmine only adjusted her microphone, her movements deliberate, her face composed. She let the storm rage around her, waiting for the perfect second to strike. Then, her voice cut through the noise like steel. Mr. Trump, do you really expect us to believe this? Her tone was calm, but under it, a blade glinted. She lifted the document from the table, holding it up. The camera zoomed closer. Because I've seen this trick before. She flipped the page with surgical precision, exposing inconsistencies line by line. Wrong letterhead, wrong date formatting. Even the signatures, identical, copied and pasted. This isn't evidence, Mr. Trump. It's a forgery. The chamber froze. The energy shifted. The audience leaned forward, eyes wide, the balance teetering on a razor's edge. Jasmine's voice sharpened, her words striking like a hammer. You forged a document in front of the American people during a congressional hearing. Gasps, a sharp crack in the air as reality landed. Trump's smirk faltered. His lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, his voice failed him. Jasmine turned to the chairman. Mr. Chair, I request this so-called evidence be entered into the record as Exhibit A in Donald Trump's deception. The audience erupted. Cheers, shouts, chants. Busted! Caught red-handed! Justice! Trump's supporters scrambled, shouting denials, but their noise was hollow. The image of him, caught clutching a forged weapon, burned too bright to ignore. Jasmine pressed the final nail. Her voice rose, commanding, undeniable. This is not just about lies. This is about a man so desperate, so terrified of the truth, that he would stoop to forgery in the halls of Congress. And let the record show, desperation is the final refuge of the guilty. The words detonated. The chamber erupted again, this time like an earthquake. Even those who doubted her moments ago now leaned in, nodding, whispering. She turned it around. She destroyed him. She's unstoppable. Trump's face drained of color. The swagger was gone. His jaw locked, his hands clenched, his body rigid as if every ounce of power he once commanded had slipped through his fingers. For the first time, the great Donald Trump sat silent, cornered, exposed. And Jasmine? She didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice in triumph. She simply leaned back in her chair, eyes cold, as if she had just delivered a verdict rather than a punch. The people watching knew it. They felt it in their bones. This wasn't just a rebuttal. This was a killing blow. Online, the reaction ignited instantly. Clips flooded social media. Jasmine just nuked Trump with the fakest document I've ever seen. This is the endgame. She dismantled him in seconds. That was the knockout punch. Game over. And the hashtags trended worldwide. Shockers, dirty trick backfires. Shocky. Crockett strikes back. In living rooms, on phones across the world, viewers leaned back, adrenaline surging. The war wasn't over, but the momentum had shifted, seismically, irreversibly. Because when Trump played his dirtiest card, Jasmine Crockett tore it to shreds, and America watched him crumble, but the fire wasn't done feeding. The chairman adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and looked toward the heavy doors at the back of the chamber. His gavel struck once, sharp and deliberate. Bring in the witness. Every head turned, the doors creaked open, and into the hall stepped a man the public had never seen, but whose name had whispered through political circles for months. The air stiffened. The audience leaned forward. The moment felt cinematic, like a shadow stepping into the light. The witness took the oath, his voice low but steady. And then, without hesitation, he dropped the bomb. I was there. Donald Trump wasn't just aware. He orchestrated the scheme. He ordered the playbook. He wanted it buried, hidden from the public. The chamber detonated. Gasps, shouts, phones whipped into the air to record every second. Trump snapped upright, eyes blazing. Liar! That's a damn lie, he thundered, pounding the desk. But the witness didn't flinch. He met Trump's fury head-on, voice unshaken. You can scream all you want. You can insult me. But the truth doesn't bend to your volume. The words pierced deeper than any blade. Even Trump's allies glanced nervously, shuffling papers, whispering to one another, suddenly unsure of their footing. And Jasmine, she seized it instantly. Her tone sharpened, her cadence precise, every question a scalpel cutting into the contradictions. You said Trump gave direct instructions? On what date? June 12th, the witness replied firmly. And who else was present in that room? He rattled off names, each more incriminating than the last. The gallery gasped with every syllable. Jasmine's eyes glimmered. She leaned in, relentless. And the documents Trump presented earlier, the ones we now know are forgeries, were those part of the cover-up? Yes, they were fabricated under his direction. Trump erupted, his voice cracking under the strain. False! She's twisting your words. I never ordered that. But his protest rang hollow. The cracks in his voice betrayed him, a falter that cameras caught and microphones amplified. The witness didn't blink. The cover-up wasn't just sloppy, it was desperate. Everyone knew it. Trump's fingerprints are all over it. The audience roared again, half in fury, half in exhilaration. Clips exploded online within seconds, headlines drafting themselves in real time. Surprise witness drops bombshell. Trump directly implicated. Jasmine pressed harder. Her questions fired like a machine gun. Did Trump authorize payments? Yes. Did he instruct subordinates to destroy records? Yes. Did he threaten those who resisted? Yes, repeatedly. Each answer landed like a hammer, each confirmation nailing Trump tighter into the coffin of public opinion. Trump's face flushed red, his hair disheveled, his fists trembling on the table. This is a witch hunt, he bellowed. But the words once powerful now felt recycled, brittle. Even the crowd seemed tired of them. Jasmine didn't even look at him. Her focus was locked on the witness, extracting every detail with surgical precision. Tell this committee, she said, voice rising. Who gave the final order? The witness leaned forward, his voice steady, his words deliberate. Donald J. Trump. The room fell into a stunned silence. It lasted a heartbeat. And then chaos exploded. Reporters bolted for the exits, racing to file stories. Spectators screamed, clapped, booed, cheered. One side chanting, "Justice!" The other howling, "Set up! Fraud!" The chairman's gavel slammed over and over, useless against the tidal wave of noise. Trump, desperate, leaned into his microphone. This man is a traitor. He's been bribed, coerced. This whole thing is a sham. But his voice cracked again, thinner, weaker. The more he shouted, the more it sounded like panic. And panic was poison. Cameras zoomed closer, catching the sweat on his forehead, the twitch of his jaw, the flicker in his eyes. The once unshakable titan now looked cornered, desperate, undone. Jasmine let the chaos rage for a beat before she struck her final blow of the round. She leaned into her mic, her words slow, precise, every syllable echoing in the chamber. Today, this witness has confirmed what millions suspected, that Donald Trump was not a bystander, not a victim, but the architect of a dark scheme. And when caught, he tried to bury it under lies. Her voice hardened. And no lie is strong enough to hide the truth forever. The words landed with devastating force. The chamber erupted once more, louder, more frenzied than before. Online, viewers flooded the comment streams. Trump's unraveling in real time. This is historic. I can't look away. He's collapsing. Crockett is unstoppable. And as Trump slumped back into his chair, muttering denials drowned by the roar, it became clear. The walls were closing in. The witness had cracked the foundation. Jasmine had driven the wedge deeper, and America was watching a collapse unfold in real time. Trump wasn't just fighting Jasmine anymore. He was fighting gravity, and losing. But Donald Trump wasn't done thrashing. He slammed both palms on the table, leaned into the mic, and snarled with every ounce of venom left in his chest. This entire hearing is a political circus, a complete sham. I don't have to sit here and listen to this garbage. The words tore through the chamber like a thunderclap. Reporters froze mid-typing. Cameras whipped closer. And then he pushed his chair back with a screech, as if he were about to storm out. Gasps rippled through the room. If he walked, it would ignite a constitutional firestorm. But before he could take a single step, the chairman's gavel cracked like lightning. President Trump, you will remain seated. This committee does not yield to theatrics. The audience erupted, half jeering, half cheering. Trump's allies shouted over the noise, demanding respect for the office. But the order was clear. Trump would not be allowed to flee. He stood frozen for a beat, chest heaving, eyes darting, trapped between defiance and humiliation. And then Jasmine Crockett rose from her seat. She didn't shout. She didn't pound the table. She simply stepped forward, closing the distance, her gaze locked on his. The room fell silent, as though the oxygen itself had paused. And then she spoke, her voice calm, resonant, undeniable. No one is above the law, not even the president. The words echoed, sharp and clean, slicing through the chamber like a blade. For a moment, time stopped. Every pen froze. Every camera lens focused. Every heartbeat in the room thundered in unison. Then the explosion came. The audience roared, a tidal wave of sound that shook the walls. Hands clapped, voices shouted, journalists sprinted toward the exits, already writing the headline that would dominate every paper in America. No one is above the law. Crockett destroys Trump. It was the line of the century, a phrase destined for history books. A sentence that would be replayed on every network, etched onto protest signs, stitched into the memory of the nation. Trump's face went pale, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. He tried to speak, but no sound came. The silence from him spoke louder than any denial. Jasmine, steady as stone, turned back to the committee. Her voice carried not just authority, but inevitability. Let the record show. This hearing is not a performance. It is not a circus. It is justice. And justice bows to no man's ego. The chairman nodded gravely, the gavel punctuating her words. Order attempted to return, though the air still crackled with electricity. Viewers online flooded the chat in real time. She broke him. This is history. I'm crying. Justice finally spoke truth to power. Meanwhile, cable networks replayed the clip instantly, each frame dissected, every syllable analyzed. Pundits declared it the golden quote of the decade, a single sentence that crystallized an entire battle into a truth no one could ignore. Trump sat, rigid, fists trembling, eyes wild. For the first time in his career, he looked smaller than the room he occupied. The swagger was gone, replaced with something rawer, darker, fear. He growled into the mic at last, voice low, cracking under the strain. You'll regret this. But even that, stripped of thunder, sounded more like a threat from a cornered man than the declaration of a leader. Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't need to respond. Her words had already written themselves into the bloodstream of America. The clash had moved beyond the chamber, beyond politics, beyond the hearing itself. It had become a war cry, and Jasmine Crockett was its voice. Trump shifted in his seat, tugging at his tie, his face a storm of rage and humiliation. But every camera was locked on Jasmine now. She was no longer just a congresswoman. She was the embodiment of defiance against unchecked power. The crowd inside the chamber erupted again, chants rising, "Justice! Justice!" as though the walls themselves demanded the truth. And in that moment, one thing was clear. The desperate gambit had backfired. The escape route slammed shut. And Trump, for all his bluster, was now chained to the reckoning he had tried so desperately to avoid. The line would haunt him. The silence would follow him. And the nation would remember the moment forever. Jasmine Crockett, standing tall in the storm, reminding America of a truth too long ignored. No one is above the law, not even him. The words still hung in the chamber like smoke after an explosion. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. She turned to a thick binder laid neatly before her, its edges bristling with tabs, its weight heavy with truth. When she opened it, the sound of pages turning seemed to cut through the silence sharper than any gavel. "Mr. Trump," she began, her voice steady, deliberate, unyielding. "Let's talk about the money." She lifted a sheet and held it up, the numbers projected on the giant screen behind her. Columns of transactions, wire transfers, and shell companies lit up the chamber. "Every dollar tells a story, and this story is yours." The room gasped as she pointed to a date, then another. On March 15th, a transfer of $2. $3 million routed through a company registered under your associate's name. On May 4th, another $1.7 million moved offshore, hidden under layers of false accounts. Each figure landed like a blade, slicing deeper into the armor he once wore so proudly. Trump shifted in his seat, his jaw clenched, and for the first time his voice quivered. "This is nonsense. Fake numbers, fabricated out of thin air." But his protest cracked, the pitch just slightly too high, the edges fraying under pressure. Jasmine didn't flinch. She flipped to the next page, her tone cold, surgical. "Page 47, a $900,000 payment? Destination, a property linked directly to your family trust. Care to explain that?" Trump's face reddened, his lips tightening into a thin line. He leaned toward the mic, eyes blazing, but his words stumbled out ragged, uneven. You don't know what you're talking about. These are normal business dealings. Nothing unusual." The camera zoomed in, capturing every twitch, every bead of sweat, every crack in his mask. For the first time, America was watching Donald Trump not as a defiant titan, but as a man cornered, unraveling. Jasmine pressed harder. "Normal business dealings? Then why were these transfers flagged for irregular activity by 3 separate banks? Why did auditors resign after reviewing them?" Her voice rose, cutting like thunder. "Why, Mr. Trump, does every trail of money end with you?" The audience gasped again, the sound like a wave crashing through the chamber. Trump's allies shuffled nervously, some averting their eyes, others whispering desperately into phones. And then the camera caught him, his face. For the first time in decades of public life, Donald J. Trump looked like a man defeated. The bravado was gone. The smirk had vanished. All that remained was a hollow stare, red-rimmed eyes glaring as though searching for an exit that didn't exist. The image burned across television screens in real time, screenshots spreading like wildfire across social media. On Twitter, hashtags erupted. Crockett, Trump exposed, Chachish Crockett, news, justice closing. And one chilling post went viral instantly, paired with his broken expression. "Is this the moment the battle ends?" Jasmine didn't let up. She lifted another page, her voice steady as stone. "These numbers don't lie. They don't waver. They don't crumble under pressure. They are truth. And that truth says you built an empire of deceit, then tried to bury it under intimidation and denial." Her eyes locked on him, unblinking. "You can shout. You can deny. But numbers don't care about your power. Numbers don't bend to your will. Numbers are forever." Trump slammed his fist on the table, a hollow thud that echoed through the chamber. "Witch hunt," he barked, but the word fell flat, met with more laughter than fear. For the first time, the echo of his trademark defense sounded like a death rattle. The chairman tried to restore order, pounding his gavel, but the energy in the room had shifted. Everyone could feel it. The momentum was gone. The fight was slipping away. And as Jasmine closed the binder with a soft, final thud, the sound was louder than his roar. The noose was tightening, and everyone knew it. Jasmine Crockett didn't move fast. She didn't need to. Her calm was more lethal than any outburst. She reached for the final folder, a thin set of papers compared to the mountain she had already unleashed. But everyone in the chamber sensed it. The last piece, the one that could not be explained away. When she lifted it, silence gripped the room. Even the shuffling of aides, the low hum of cameras, gone. Only her voice remained. This, she said, holding the document high, is the wire transfer that proves it all. Not rumor, not speculation, hard evidence. The screen behind her flashed the page in full, a signature, a routing number, a direct line connecting Donald J. Trump to the hidden accounts. No middleman, no buffer, just him. The chamber gasped like a single body hit in the chest. Jasmine's words sliced through the stunned air. Mr. Trump, this is your name. This is your approval code. This is you authorizing the transfer. Trump froze. For 3 long seconds, he said nothing. His hands gripped the desk so tightly his knuckles blanched. His mouth opened, then closed. The silence was louder than his fury. The cameras zoomed in, waiting, holding their breath with the nation. And then it snapped. This, his voice cracked before surging into a roar. This is treason. This whole committee is committing treason against the United States of America. His words thundered across the chamber. But they didn't land, not anymore. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't chant his name. Instead, a murmur of disbelief spread, followed by silence so suffocating it drowned him out. Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't even flinch. Her stillness was devastating. Treason? She repeated softly, her tone like steel wrapped in velvet. No, Mr. Trump. Treason is betraying your country for your own gain. Treason is siphoning millions while Americans suffered. Treason is thinking you could bury the truth. Her words echoed, every syllable striking like a hammer on stone. The cameras panned to Trump's allies. Their eyes fell to the floor. No defense, no applause, no shield left. For years they had stood, shouted, protected. But in this moment, they looked small, deflated, defeated. Trump saw it too. His gaze darted down the row, searching for a nod, a raised fist, even a whispered word of loyalty. There was nothing. The betrayal wasn't from Jasmine. It was from the silence of his own side. The weight of it pressed on him. He leaned forward, trembling with rage, spittle flying as he tried to reclaim control. This is a witch hunt, a lie, a disgusting sham. But the words rang hollow, bouncing off walls that no longer cared to listen. Jasmine stepped closer, her heels clicking against the floor. Every step measured, deliberate. When she stopped, she looked directly at him, her voice low but cutting enough to slice through the last of his defenses. You did this to yourself. The chamber erupted, not with chaos, but with a thunderous release. Gasps, shouts, applause that broke like a wave, rolling from one end to the other. On social media, the phrase lit up instantly. You did this to yourself. The new rallying cry, the new golden line. Trump sagged in his chair, his face pale, lips quivering, eyes red and furious, yet drowning in something new. Fear. For the first time in his life, Donald Trump had no words left that could save him. Jasmine, calm as ever, closed the folder and placed it neatly on the desk. Her final strike wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. You have revealed yourself, she said, her voice ringing like a verdict. You have unmasked your own lies. You stood before this nation and in your desperation showed us exactly who you are. Her gaze never wavered. Mr. Trump, you have already delivered your own judgment. You have stripped yourself bare. You have exposed yourself. And then, with the quiet finality of history writing itself, she spoke the words that would be replayed for decades. You have condemned yourself. The words fell like a gavel, heavier than law, sharper than any blade. Trump sat motionless, chest heaving, eyes darting. The image of a man who had ruled by fury and noise, finally crushed by silence and truth. The chamber didn't just witness a political defeat, they witnessed an empire collapsing. The decisive moment had arrived, and Donald Trump knew it. But the chamber wasn't the only place trembling. Within minutes, the outside world ignited. CNN's ticker screamed, "Trump falls before justice." The New York Times ran with a headline that would define an era, "The King Unmasked." Across the ocean, The Guardian in London declared, "America's reckoning, Trump crumbles." The news cycle spun like a storm out of control. Every screen, every feed, every headline told the same story. The empire had cracked. Crowds surged into the streets. In New York, thousands gathered in Times Square, chanting, holding signs, their voices echoing through the concrete canyons. In Texas, counter-protests erupted, Trump loyalists waving flags, shouting that it was all a hoax. Police formed barricades, sirens wailing, helicopters circling overhead. America was split in two, one half celebrating, the other raging. And in the middle of it, the world watched, transfixed. Paris lit up the Eiffel Tower in blue heptarion, white and red, the colors of both France and America, symbolizing solidarity in democracy's fight. In Berlin, crowds gathered at the Brandenburg Gate, chanting Jasmine Crockett's name as if she were their own champion. In Moscow, state TV sneered, framing the downfall as America's weakness. But even there, behind closed doors, whispers admitted something had shifted forever. And through it all, Jasmine's image reigned. Clips of her final words, "You have condemned yourself," circulated like wildfire, racking up millions of views within hours. TikTok remixes turned the phrase into an anthem. Twitter pulsed with hashtags, "Shock Crockett vs. Trump," "Shocks Truth Wins," "Sure no one above the law." For the first time in decades, a congressional hearing clip wasn't dry, procedural, forgotten. It was cinematic. It was history in motion. Jasmine Crockett was no longer just a representative. She was a warrior, a face of defiance, a woman who stared down power and did not blink. Her inbox overflowed with messages, some of adoration, some of hatred, but all proof of one thing: she had shaken the foundation. Meanwhile, Donald Trump scrambled. His team rushed him onto friendly networks, desperate to repaint him as the victim. "This is a coup," he shouted on one broadcast, his voice raw, face flushed. "They are stealing your country." But the footage told another story. Clips of his trembling hands, his bloodshot eyes, his silence before the final evidence. Those were seared into the public mind. No slogan could wash them away. Even his allies faltered. One by one, senators dodged cameras. Former loyalists issued careful statements. Words like serious allegations and disturbing evidence. No one said witch hunt anymore. For Trump, the battlefield had shifted. He was no longer the attacker. He was the cornered man, swinging wildly at shadows. And the world smelled blood. Markets wavered, nervous of instability. Foreign leaders recalculated strategies. In Beijing, officials whispered that America had weakened itself. In Ottawa, the Canadian Prime Minister praised Crockett's courage to uphold the rule of law. Everywhere, the question was the same. Was this the end of Donald Trump, or the beginning of something darker? But inside America, something else was happening. For every angry protester waving a Trump flag, there were twice as many who whispered, for the first time, that maybe justice could touch anyone, that maybe no figure was untouchable, that maybe the system, though battered, could still roar back to life. And Jasmine Crockett stood at the center of it all. She didn't celebrate. She didn't gloat. Her public statement was short, measured, unflinching. This was not about me. This was about the truth, and the truth must always prevail. It was exactly what the nation needed to hear. The line played on every station. It was carved into headlines. It was quoted in classrooms, boardrooms, even pulpits. In that moment, Jasmine wasn't just a congresswoman. She was a symbol, a reminder that courage could still pierce the armor of corruption. And Trump? He paced alone in a gilded room, curtains drawn, phone buzzing endlessly with calls he no longer wanted to answer. The walls, once his throne, felt smaller, tighter, colder. For years he had thrived on chaos. Now chaos was eating him alive. The decisive moment had passed, but the aftershocks had only just begun, and the world would not look away. Inside the chamber, silence pressed heavy against the walls. Then, with the gavel's final strike, the chairman's voice cut through. "The committee will move all findings and evidence to federal prosecutors for criminal investigation." The words thundered like a verdict, though no jury had yet spoken. Gasps filled the room. Reporters bolted for the exits, phones glued to their ears, racing to break the headline first. Trump sat frozen for a moment, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed into slits of fury. He knew what that meant. This was no longer theater, no longer politics. This was survival. Security closed in around him. He shoved his chair back, the scrape echoing louder than any word. Cameras tracked his every move as he stormed out, flanked by aides, his expression carved from rage. "This isn't over," he barked, the words spitting from his mouth like venom. "The game isn't finished." The phrase ricocheted through microphones, searing itself into the narrative. His voice carried defiance, but his eyes told another story. Bloodshot, cornered, desperate. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett remained seated, calm, unmoved. She waited until the last echoes of Trump's fury had faded down the corridor. Then, with deliberate grace, she rose. The lights of 100 cameras converged on her, bathing her in a halo of white. In her hands, she held the thick stack of documents, the evidence that had cracked the facade wide open, and as she raised them high, the chamber erupted in flashes. Click, click, click. 1,000 shutters captured the moment. The image would travel the globe within minutes. Jasmine Crockett, standing tall, papers aloft, eyes burning not with triumph, but with resolve. It was more than a picture. It was a symbol that power could be confronted, that truth could rise no matter how loud the lies. Outside, the crowd swelled against the barricades. Some cheered her name. Others hurled insults, their voices hoarse with anger. Helicopters hovered above, broadcasting the chaos live to millions. Jasmine stepped into the light of the cameras, microphones thrust toward her like weapons. The noise roared. Questions shouted, overlapping. She said only one line, measured, unshaken. "This is not the end. This is the beginning." And then she walked forward, through the blinding flashes, through the storm of sound, her figure cutting straight into history. Behind her, Trump's words still lingered in the air like smoke. The game isn't finished. The clash had ended for the day. But the war was only just beginning. Across America, the nation split deeper. Cable news blared dueling narratives. One side called Crockett a hero, a shield of justice. The other spat fury, branding her a traitor, a puppet. In the streets, marches swelled larger. Signs lit the night sky. No one above the law, clashing with "Save Our President." On social media, the hashtags multiplied. "Chocker Justice begins." "Your shocker, Trump vs. Crockett." "Chocker, the game is not over." The world watched, waiting for the next move. In Washington, federal investigators prepared to sift through the evidence. Subpoenas whispered on the horizon. Trials loomed like storm clouds. Trump retreated to his fortress of loyalists, planning his counterattack. His voice echoed across rallies, screens, airwaves. "They're coming for me because they can't control you." And his base roared back louder than ever. Jasmine, meanwhile, worked in silence. Her allies gathered close, urging caution, but she pressed forward, undeterred. For her, the fight was never about spectacle. It was about justice, and she knew the fire was far from out. The world had seen a reckoning. But reckonings don't end with a headline. They ripple, they burn, they reshape the ground beneath our feet. And as the dust settled over Washington, one truth became clear. This was no ending. It was the start of a new battlefield. The stakes higher, the lines sharper, the cost unimaginable. Jasmine Crockett had stepped into the light, armed with truth. Donald Trump had stormed into the shadows, armed with vengeance. Two forces, one nation, and a story far from finished. Because the fight for justice never truly ends. It only changes form. And the next chapter was already waiting to be written. Justice is not a single moment, nor a single battle. It is a torch carried from one generation to the next. In every courtroom, every chamber, every street where voices rise against silence, the choice remains the same: to surrender to fear or to stand for what is right. This story reminds us that courage is not the absence of struggle, but the decision to fight for truth even when the odds seem impossible. And when we choose justice, we do more than resist. We build a future worthy of hope. If this battle shook you, don't just scroll. Think on it. Talk about it. Pass it to someone who knows that silence protects the powerful. Like, comment and share. Because stories like this aren't entertainment, they're warnings. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where every voice matters and no lie goes unchallenged. Turn on the bell, because the next clash isn't comfortable. It's fierce, and it may change how you see justice itself. This is a fictional dramatization, drawn from shadows of real corruption and real courage. Any resemblance to actual figures is coincidental or symbolic, meant to spark reflection. Thank you for watching. Justice isn't inherited, it's fought for. This is Harrison Stories.